Welcome back to episode 2 of Worthless Wednesdays. And I'm missing baseball a lot. Let's talk about baseball. Let's do some worthless things with baseball and some fun things about baseball. Something maybe you'll never use again in your life, but who knows, you may. And like I said, everything here isn't going to help you out in life. So, without further ado, let's get to it. This would have been the first weekend for me to take the kids to opening day of Angel Baseball. And I was very excited because we were going to be playing the Astros, right? The Astros, the cheating Astros. And, well, coronavirus has actually ruined me seeing us whoop on the Astros. And, well, instead of that, I'm here creating a very low budget show on YouTube. So I guess it's a win-win for me. So this week, I thought I would go ahead and find 3 really worthless pieces of information for you. And what we're gonna do are 3 things. 1, I'm gonna tell you what I think are my top 10 best baseball names of all time. From the beginning till now, the best names that have ever graced us with their presence in the major leagues. The second one is my fishing on a mission all-time team. That's right. Everyone in this category, every position, mind you, I was able to find someone who has a fishing name. That's right. Believe it or not, there's enough trouts and salmons in the world to fill a baseball team and play every position. And finally, some worthless things about baseball. Believe it or not, the world's greatest sport is filled with some worthless, very worthless rules and some other worthless facts that go along with it. So that's what we're going to do for you. Let's jump into the 10 best baseball names of all time. Okay? Now, want to let you know, as always, I fact-checked these all by the internet and Major League Baseball reference. So, these are real names. These are not made-up names. And if you don't believe me, well, just leave a comment and we'll go from there. All right? Starting with number 10, Dick Hunt. Yes, Dick Hunt. You heard me correctly. Dick, in 1872, played for the Brooklyn Eckforts. So, that's all you need to know. Old-time guy, great name. Number 9 was Dick Cox. Dick Cox. Dick played for the Brooklyn Robins in 1925. And as my research has come to find out, in baseball, there's a lot of Dicks. Okay. Number 8, Oil Can Boyd. Oil Can Boyd was one of the only players who openly admitted to playing a whole season on crack. That's right. In 1986, Oil Can had a great season. The Red Sox went to the World Series, and he was on crack. In fact, he was supposed to pitch the game after Bill Buckner's colossal meltdown, where the ball dribbled between his legs. But the manager came and told him he wasn't going to pitch the next game, which I think was Game 7. So instead, Oil Can got mad and said he went to the crack house. So, Oil Can Boyd at number 8. Number 7, Lil Stoner. Yeah, Lil Stoner. Lil was a Tiger in 1922. Not a great line. Only 2 years, over 500 as a pitcher. Only played 7 in the major leagues, but, again, great name, Stoner. Number 6, And in some parts of the country, it could be number 2. It won't be number 1, because I'm telling you, the number 1 I got is really good. But number 6, Budweiser. Now, you would think that Bud either played for Colorado or St. Louis, but that wasn't the case. Harry Budson Weiser played for the Philadelphia Phillies instead. So, sorry, Anheuser-Busch and Coors, he didn't play in any of your states. Okay, now the top 5. And at number 5, Stubby Clapp. Now, what's interesting is Stubby was Canadian, And, well, he only played 1 year, and it was with the Cards. And he batted 200, and then never saw the majors again. But he has a great name. So, Stubby Clapp at number 5. Number 4, Jack Glasscock. Yes, he played from 79 to 95. That's 1875 to 1895. And he played most of those years with the Cleveland Blues. Again, not a great player, but a great name and potentially a very strong number 2. Still, wait till you hear number 1. Number 3, Cannonball Titcomb. Liddell, who also went by Cannonball because he had a rifle of an arm, played for the Phillies in 1886. Not a bad line, pretty good player, but better last name. So now we've made it to the top 2. All right, and at number 2 is Johnny Dickshot. Mr. Dickshot played for the Pirates in 1926 and had a career average of 276. Almost a 300 hitter, not bad. But again, like I've said, it's a lot of dicks in Major League Baseball. All right, and the number 1 best name of all time, and a player I actually got to see play, Rusty Kuntz. That's right, Rusty Kuntz played for the Detroit Tigers in 1984. Actually got a hit in the World Series to win the World Series. And even better, Rusty is from San Luis Obispo, played at Cuesta College, and then went on to play in Detroit. I thought it was kind of ironic that he lived in the same area that I went to college, and he played for the Tigers, one of my favorite teams. Then there you have it, the top 10 names ever to play baseball, culminating with number 1, Rusty Kuntz. And I dare anyone to find 2 better names at the top of any list than Johnny Dickshot and Rusty Kuntz. Okay? So pretty strong names. All right. So now we've made it to the all fishing on a mission team. These are all players who have a name that has to do something with fishing, okay? And I've spread them around the pond, right? Let's start with first base. First base was an Atlanta Brave who in 1992, you might remember sliding into home base to beat the Pittsburgh Pirates. This is before Barry Bonds' head grew to astronomical proportions when he was just working out, okay? So, Sid Bream. Now, did you know that a bream is a type of fish? It is. Look it up. It's actually in there. But Sid Bream at first base. Now, second base, Bobby Sturgeon. Played for the Cubs and the Braves in the 40s. Pretty good ball player and had a really good record for very few errors. So, Bobby Sturgeon. At shortstop, Benji Gill. Benji Gill was actually on the Angels who won the title and had a pretty good line during the series. He did have to play with a few injuries, but Benji Gill was on the team and has a World Series ring. All right, third base. Third base, we're gonna play Lip Pike. And Lip played in 1866 for the Philadelphia Athletics. And that's all I really know about Lip. He just had a great name. So, and Pike was his last name. So why not? Now, if Mr. Pike there gets hurt, we're going to bring in Bobby Scales. Bobby Scales played with the Cubs, and not a great player, but is from Southfield, Michigan. So, fine, lad. If Lip goes down, we've got a utility player to get right in there, Mr. Scales. All right? Now, that brings us to catcher. And to finish out the infield, catcher, we need a strong catcher. And the Angels had one, and Hank Conger, right? Conger is a fish. Look it up. It's real. And Hank, coincidentally, now plays for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Another aquatic animal. So I think that itself is a bit fishy. All right. And of course, now we've got the outfield. Before we get to the pitchers, we've got to supply the outfield. The outfield for this one was terribly easy. We know who we're starting in center field, right? It's none other than Mr. Mike Trout, right? Best baseball player in the game. Of course, he's on the team. Now, in right field, we need a really strong arm, so we're going to play Tim Salmon, also an Angel who happens to have a World Series ring, right? Tim Salmon. Now, to much of my chagrin, we did have to put an Astro on the team. And that's only because his last name is Bass. Kevin Bass, an outfielder for the Astros, and I think for Milwaukee Brewers too, so he's saving himself there. We're going to put him in left field. So the outfield will be Trout, Salmon, Bass. Okay? Now, let's move on to pitchers. And our starting rotation, what kind of team would we have if we didn't start Jim Catfish Hunter, right? I mean, everyone wants to have the Catfish on their team. To finish out the rotation, we're going to have Mudcat Grant, Jack Morris, and Dizzy Trout. Now, if you're challenging me on Jack Morris, he was a great pitcher for the Detroit Tigers and the Minnesota Twins. But look it up. A jack is actually a fish. All right? Now the bullpen. Every successful team needs a great bullpen, and this is no exception. We're going to start out with Stuart Marlin. We're going to add Art Herring. Then we're going to add Anthony Bass and Bobby Ray. So on the bench, we're also going to need to have some utility players. And we're going to put on the bench Oyster Burns and Mike Karp. So there you have it. However, we need someone to manage this team. And in my research, I came across someone who absolutely fit the bill. And he's got a very fishing last name, right? So, but there's something fishy about this guy, and his name is Dick Pole. And I told you, there's a lot of dicks in baseball, right? So Dick Pole was a pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. He also is an inaugural member of the Seattle Mariners back in 1976. So kind of maritime water type of guy. But what's even more interesting is Mr. Pole was born in Trout Creek, Michigan. Coincidence? I think not. But he's made it onto the all-time Fishing on a Mission team, right? So there you have it. Fishing on a Mission team is complete. All of the positions are filled. And I think besides the Astro on there, who we'd obviously throw back, it's a pretty strong team. So now let's talk about what's really worthless about baseball. 3 stupid things about baseball. Number 3 is Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame. Now, if you don't know, Charlie Hustle was gambling on baseball when he was a player manager. He was gambling on baseball for his team to win, right? But Bartlett Giamatti, who was the commissioner at the time, said, you are getting a permanent ban from baseball, which means he can never be elected to the Hall of Fame. Being that Pete Rose is one of the greatest players of all time, he would have been a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. However, he's not. As well as Shoeless Joe Jackson, who in 1919 was accused of the Black Sox scandal, right? Where they were throwing the World Series. So, but Shoeless Joe Jackson played great in that series. He just became part of what's known as the Black Sox, who were basically also banned from baseball. But I will tell you this. So they don't like gambling on baseball. I get it. You shouldn't be gambling against your team, which means you'd probably throw it. If you're gambling for your team, well, I'd assume you're playing a little bit harder and that's not such a big deal. But whatever, he's banned. But you know who is in the Hall of Fame? Ty Cobb. Now everyone loves Ty Cobb, right? If you saw the movie, or if you read anything about him, he's, you know, a Detroit Tiger, probably one of the most famous baseball players besides Babe Ruth of all time. But he was kind of a dick, right? I mean, Ty Cobb actually jumped into the stands and beat up a handicapped man one time because he was heckling him. So I don't know, is that any better than gambling on your team? And also, all these dudes doing steroids that could have been in the Hall of Fame, is that worse than being gambling on your own team? I don't know. But all I'm saying is Pete Rose needs to be in the Hall of Fame. No questions asked. Get it done now. Okay? Terribly worthless for baseball not to have Pete Rose in there, right? Okay. Number two worthless thing about baseball is the unwritten rules. Listen, if they're not written, they're not rules, okay? If they're ways to play the game or gentlemen's rules, a lot of these players like to call them gentlemen's rules, right? So you don't bunt when someone's got a no-hitter going in the seventh. Well, the guy from the Padres did and killed Curt Schilling's no-hitter, and then Bruce Bochy comes out and complains about it and says, well, he's not playing the game right. You never do that. Well, guess what? If you're on my team and we're getting no hit, bunt the ball. Yeah, that's right, bunt the ball, because we need a hit. I would rather bunt the ball and get a hit than have a no-hitter thrown against me. That's the worst, right? If you think about it, right, there are 27 outs on your team for a game. If the pitcher gets all of them and you never get a hit, that's not great, right? So go ahead, get the hit. Some of these other, there's some other rules too. Don't steal bases when you're up too big because you don't want to embarrass the other team. I don't know about you, but baseball doesn't have a clock like football or basketball, right? At the end of both of those sports, there is a time limit. Time will run out on you to score more. In baseball, I saw the Cleveland Indians score 13 runs one time against the Seattle Mariners with an incredible bullpen that they ended up winning the game. So you're never out of it in baseball. Crazy stuff happens in that game. So to say you shouldn't steal when you're up big, BS. Get the bases while you can. Get the score. Run the score up. That's what fans are there to see, run scoring. Okay? So score runs. The next one is bat flipping. You're not supposed to bat flip. It's considered taunting or arrogant. Listen, if you're the last guy up and you hit a moonshot for your team to win the game, you hit a walk-off, flip the bat. Everyone in that crowd wants to see that. Everybody that's watching SportsCenter wants to see that. Now, do you want to flip the bat for a blooper to center field? No, probably not. That's not a great hit. But if you're Bryce Harper and you launch one, or some of the shots that David Ortiz hit in World Series play or playoff play, yeah, flip the bat. We should all be wanting to see that. So those are some of the unwritten rules that technically, if they were written, maybe they would matter, but They're not written, so they're not rules. And who cares? Get over it. If they're not written down, they're not rules, just play the game, right? And finally, the number one most worthless thing about baseball are the announcers. There are two announcers who are just colossally bad. Joe Buck takes the heat for being one of the worst announcers. He even had a guy stand up in the playoffs that said, Joe Buck sucks. Now, I will agree. Joe Buck is biased. He's biased in both baseball and football. He's not a great announcer. I assume that the reason he was so in love with the Astros was because his father was an announcer for the Cards, and the Cards and Dodgers did not like each other. So I'm sure that had something to do with it. However, Joe Buck isn't the worst. There is one gentleman who actually made me envy the deaf, because I would have to watch the games he was on mute. Tim McCarver almost acted senile at certain parts. And I can't ever remember Tim McCarver having really anything good to say. So we all know the incident between him and Deion Sanders. Deion didn't like him. They verbally spat back and forth. Deion walks into the clubhouse and pours Gatorade all over Tim, gives him a nice shower, and Tim, launches back about how Deion's not classy and he's a real good guy. That's kind of Tim McCarver's biggest moment. But there are other moments that Tim McCarver had that were equally as bad. One of those moments was in 2004 in the ALCS when David Ortiz hit a monstrous grand slam. And Tim McCarver, in his brilliance, says, Mount Everest has erupted again. No, Tim, no. I don't think Everest is a volcano. Not the last I checked, not a volcano. A mountain, and a big mountain, but not a volcano. Perhaps you meant Mount St. Helen. Perhaps. And the fun thing about Tim was he would get so far down into his own crap that he could never get out of it, right? So he was never going to admit that he was wrong, so he just kind of moves on to something else, right? But that was one of my favorite moments. One of my other favorite moments is when he was calling a game with Darren Dalton, who was a catcher for the Philadelphia Phillies, and he said, McCarver was also a catcher, and a good one. I mean, he caught Bob Gibson, right? I mean, that's not easy. And Bob Gibson was a great pitcher, Hall of Fame pitcher. And he says about Darren Dalton, he says, Darren Dalton's using his glove like a mitt. That's good, Tim, because a glove is a mitt. And we're earth-shattering to give us that play-by-play at home. Really on top of his game. But my favorite was when A-Rod was facing K-Rod, and Tim McCarver decided to tell us that we could actually call this matchup the Rod Rod. That was Tim McCarver for you. And it was relentless. Keep in mind, Tim McCarver was also the one who said that the reason that we're seeing more home runs was because of climate change. Not because of steroids or the players working out more and getting bigger and stronger, but climate change. Yep, climate change and the ozone layer going away was what caused the balls to fly farther. Now, maybe that's it, but I kind of don't think so. Well, that's it for this Wednesday. I'm glad you came and watched. I'm glad I did this. I am missing some baseball, so at least this gave me something to talk about. And next week, I don't know. We're still probably going to be sheltering in place, but I'm sure I can find other worthless things for you to talk about, and I hope you return. So, like always, thanks for watching. If you'd like to subscribe, go ahead. If not, that's cool too. And if you'd like to ring that little bell down there, go ahead. But I'll give you a tip. We're probably gonna do this on Wednesdays. So if you don't ring the bell, just come back on Wednesdays and see what I've got for you. All right? Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Wash your hands.